The execution broadcast began without warning. Across the known galaxy, every screen flickered with the imperial sigil, a spiraling mass of black and gold, its harsh lines cutting into the void. Then came the voice, calm, authoritative, and utterly devoid of mercy. Citizens of the Empire, today justice is served. The image shifted, revealing the towering tribunal halls of Morkel Prime. The high chamber, carved from obsidian and illuminated by cold artificial light, overlooked an open square where hundreds of human prisoners stood on elevated platforms, their hands bound behind their backs. They were soldiers, captured in the last battle, their faces bruised, but their eyes still burning with defiance. Ropes dangled from metal beams above them, swaying slightly in the sterile air. Morkel Thale, the Emperor of the Galactic Dominion, stepped forward. He was tall, his elongated reptilian form adorned in ceremonial gold, his dark eyes unblinking as he raised a single clawed hand. Silence fell over the chamber. For crimes against the Empire, for daring to rebel against the natural order, these creatures shall perish. The feed panned to the audience, a sea of imperial citizens, nobles, and bureaucrats. Many sat in silent approval. Others, particularly the families of fallen Dominion soldiers, were ravenous in their demand for vengeance. Let this be a lesson to all who oppose the might of the Dominion, the Emperor declared. He gave the signal. The floor beneath the prisoners collapsed. The ropes went taut. Across a dozen alien worlds, humanity watched in horror. The broadcast did not cut away. No merciful black screen. No interruption. Just the slow, agonizing final moments of their fellow men and women, left hanging like crude trophies in the heart of the Dominion. The reaction was immediate. Earth's communication networks erupted with outrage. The colonies flared with demands for retribution. On Mars, riots broke out outside the Galactic Embassy. On Luna, every screen that had played the execution was smashed, burned, or torn from walls. On the Roar, the flagship of the Terran fleet, silence reigned. General Jack Washington stood alone in his quarters, his hands clenched into fists. The room around him was dark save for the dim glow of the holoscreen, replaying the broadcast. He had seen death before. He had spent 3 decades in war, first as a soldier, then as a commander. But this was different. This was not war. This was cruelty, delivered with the cold precision of an empire that thought itself untouchable. A soft chime cut through the silence, signaling an incoming transmission. He turned to the screen. The Terran War Council. When the holofeed stabilized, 6 figures appeared, each a high-ranking official or admiral. Some were on Earth, others stationed across human space. All had the same look in their eyes. Admiral Singh was the first to speak. The people demand action. We can't afford another full-scale war, Councilman Braxton interjected. Not now. War's already here, Washington said, his voice rough with restrained fury. He exhaled slowly, pressing a palm against the desk. They hanged our people like it was a goddamn festival. They made us watch. We need to respond strategically, Braxton insisted. Retaliation could provoke them into wiping out our outer colonies. Enough, Washington snapped. You think the Empire's interested in negotiating? We've tried that for years. And look where it got us. He turned his gaze towards Singh. You said the people demand action. What's the temperature? Boiling, she replied. Colonies are already mobilizing their militia forces. Mars has voted for full-scale retaliation. Earth's divided, but the military is with us. This isn't just about soldiers, Jack. Civilians saw that footage. They lost friends, family. Washington reached for his side table and grabbed an old cigar tin. He flipped it open, retrieved a single stick, and bit down on it before speaking. We hit back. Hard. No warnings, no damn peace talks. Several council members exchanged uneasy glances. Braxton leaned forward, voice tense. You're suggesting total war? I'm suggesting justice, Washington corrected. Real justice. No more of this strategic patience bullshit. We show them what happens when you cross us. He leaned into the camera. I want their worlds burning before they even know we're coming. Singh gave a single, resolute nod. I'll deploy the fleet. You'll have my approval within the hour, another admiral added. Braxton hesitated, but knew he was outnumbered. God help us all. The transmission cut. Washington stood still for a long moment before pulling the cigar from his mouth and lighting it. He took a deep drag, letting the smoke curl through the air before exhaling. Then he turned toward the window, staring out at the endless stretch of stars. Somewhere out there, Morkelthale sat in his gilded throne, believing humanity would bow. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The USS Roar was a behemoth, a city of steel and fire drifting through the void, bristling with railguns, plasma cannons, and payloads that could turn planets into glass. Within its war-torn hull, soldiers moved with the kind of energy that came before a storm. Quiet, efficient, deadly. The war drums had been beaten. Varkesh 9 would be the first world to burn. General Jack Washington strode through the narrow corridors toward the war room, boots hitting the deck with the weight of a man carrying vengeance on his shoulders. The ship hummed around him, a deep mechanical growl that mirrored his own simmering fury. Every soldier he passed straightened, eyes locked forward, but their faces betrayed the fire within. In the war room, a massive hollow display projected the planet Varkesh 9, a fortress world deep within Dominion space. Red markers dotted the landscape, highlighting enemy strongholds, anti-air defenses, and shipyards. The Galactic Empire had thought it impenetrable. They had never fought an enemy like humanity. At the table stood the key players of Operation Iron Justice. Admiral Singh, always poised and razor-sharp, controlled the fleet. Colonel Vasquez, built like a war machine in human skin, commanded the ground forces. Lieutenant Jane O'Hara, a pilot with nerves of steel and a mouth that could flay an officer, was leading the first aerial strike. Corporal Benny Hacks Jones, Earth's best cyber warfare specialist, leaned lazily against a console, chewing on a protein bar like he had all the time in the world. Washington planted his hands on the table. All right, let's make this quick. I want every damn lizard on that planet knowing what happens when you mess with humans. O'Hara, give me the airstrike rundown. The lieutenant grinned, flipping a switch on her datapad. The display zoomed in on a section of Varkesh 9's upper atmosphere. We'll hit M hard and fast. EMP bombs to shut down planetary defenses, followed by a full wave of fighters. They'll be blind, deaf, and dumb before they even know what hit M. Singh crossed her arms. And if they scramble their ships? O'Hara smirked. They won't. The second we drop those bombs, we deploy the what? Washington prompted. O'Hara's smirk widened. You ever seen a drone swarm programmed to blare Ride of the Valkyries while dive-bombing enemy ships? Hacks snorted, shaking his head. It was that or Highway to Hell. Still debating the ethics of both. Singh sighed. Ethics left the building when they broadcasted those executions. Vasquez cracked his knuckles. My boots hit the ground the second those bombs go off. My boys are ready to paint that fortress red. Washington nodded, then turned back to the hologram. His fingers traced a specific zone on the map, Fortress Bastion, the heart of Varkesh 9's planetary command. If they took that out, the planet would be theirs. Good, he said, stepping back. We hit M at dawn. Let's remind these bastards why humans are the last species you ever want to piss off. The fleet arrived in Dominion space undetected. The Roar and her sister ships loomed in the darkness, their engines running silent, their weapons primed. The Dominion had never conceived of an enemy bold enough to strike at its core. They were about to learn. O'Hara's voice crackled over the comms. All wings, light M up. From the belly of the Roar, a wave of blackened ships poured into the void. They were smaller, faster than the lumbering Dominion cruisers, slicing through the vacuum like birds of prey. O'Hara led the charge, her ship darting between asteroid fields and orbital sentries. The Empire's defenses had barely registered the attack before the first EMP detonated. The effect was instantaneous. The sky flickered, then went dark. Communications failed. Auto-targeting systems collapsed. Dominion battleships drifted uselessly, their power cores struggling to reboot. Then the swarm arrived. Thousands of autonomous drones, sleek and vicious, shot toward the enemy fleet. And just as O'Hara had promised, their external speakers roared with Ride of the Valkyries at full volume. The Dominion pilots, already disoriented, watched in terror as the tiny machines weaved through their ranks, delivering explosive payloads to their engines. On the ground, alarms blared. Fortress Bastion scrambled its defenses, but it was too late. From the lower atmosphere, drop pods hurtled toward the planet's surface, each carrying a heavily armed soldier hell-bent on vengeance. Vasquez hit the dirt first, rolling out of his pod and unloading his rifle into the first Dominion soldier he saw. Around him, his men stormed forward, guns roaring, grenades flying. The enemy had the numbers, but they had no idea what they were up against. Human soldiers fought differently. They didn't march in neat formations. They didn't rely on predictable tactics. They adapted. They improvised. One Dominion officer watched in disbelief as a group of human Marines used a crashed fighter's debris as a makeshift battering ram, charging through enemy lines while shouting "Yeehaw" at the top of their lungs. Another soldier panicked when a human commando took cover behind a burning vehicle, pulled out a flask, took a long swig of whiskey, and then casually fired a rocket launcher one-handed. The ground battle raged through the night. Washington watched from orbit, smoking another cigar as he listened to the reports. "The fortress is holding," Singh muttered beside him. "Their command centers still online." "Not for long," Washington said. He turned to the comm officer. "Patch me through to Vasquez." The colonel's face appeared, streaked with sweat and dirt, but grinning like a man in his element. "How's the party?" Washington asked. "Bit of a rough crowd," Vasquez said, ducking as an explosion rocked the air behind him. Thinking of shutting it down, Washington exhaled a plume of smoke. "Do it." Vasquez switched channels. "Jones, you got eyes on their command center?" Hack's voice crackled through. "Oh, I got more than eyes. I got their entire security system under my thumb." The fortress lights flickered. Every screen within Bastion's walls switched to Terran broadcasts. The last recorded Super Bowl game. A montage of human war victories. A looped video of Washington staring into the camera and saying, "Y'all done screwed up." Then the power grid overloaded, sending a shockwave through the base. Vasquez wasted no time. His men stormed the command center, clearing room after room. The Dominion officers surrendered within minutes, throwing down their weapons, their eyes wide with disbelief. Washington's voice came through their comms. "Varkesh 9 is ours." Cheers erupted across every channel. The first strike had been a success. But Washington wasn't smiling. He took another drag from his cigar, staring at the stars beyond. The smoke still clung to the ruins of Varkesh 9 when the first signs of retaliation came. A single Dominion warship, sleek and predatory, slipped out of hyperspace at the edges of the system, lurking in the darkness. It didn't attack. It only watched. By the time the human fleet detected it, it was already gone. A warning. A message. On the USS Roar, General Jack Washington stood with his arms crossed, watching the tactical screen flicker with reports. The Dominion was moving. Fast. Recon drones had caught glimpses of massive fleet mobilizations. Entire armadas shifting like a tidal wave, a response as inevitable as it was calculated. "They're not wasting time," Admiral Singh muttered beside him. "They never do," Washington replied, rolling his cigar between his fingers. "They lost a major fortress. They can't afford to let that stand." "They'll come for our colonies first," Singh predicted. "Luna?" Mars. The Empire loves its theatrics. They'll want to make an example out of us, just like we did to them. A new transmission came through, its signal laced with encrypted Imperial coding. It was from the outer edge of human space, near Luna Base. Washington's jaw tightened. Put it through? The screen shifted to a horrifically damaged outpost, smoke curling from shattered buildings. The feed shook violently as someone ran through the rubble. Screams echoed in the distance, punctuated by the deep hum of Dominion warships overhead. The camera turned to the sky, capturing the impossible scale of the Imperial fleet descending upon them. Then the signal cut to black. The war room was silent. Washington ground his cigar into the nearest console, exhaling through his nose. Those sons of bitches. They hit Luna, Singh said grimly. They're trying to pin us down, spread us thin, Vasquez added, stepping up beside them. His uniform was still dusted with the red sands of Varkesh 9. If we split our forces, they pick us off. If we hold the line, they burn every colony they find. Then we don't play their game, Washington said. We force their hand. Singh arched an eyebrow. How? Washington jabbed a finger at the map. We lure them into a fight they can't win. O'Hara, listening from the side, let out a low chuckle. Oh, this is gonna be good? The Empire thought itself invincible. That was its greatest flaw. It had always waged war the same way. Overwhelming force, systematic occupation, crushing retaliation. It expected humans to defend their colonies with everything they had. It didn't expect a trap. 3 days later, Luna Base sent out a distress signal. The Dominion fleet arrived in full force, 2 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, waves of support craft. The battle began immediately, a wall of green laser fire and plasma bombs pounding the station's exterior. The humans fought back, outnumbered, battered, barely holding the line. Then, just as planned, they fell back. The Dominion fleet, emboldened, pursued. What they didn't know was that Luna Base wasn't the real target. It was the bait. In the shadows of the Kepler asteroid belt, the full Terran fleet lay in wait. Hidden among the celestial debris, power cores running cold to avoid detection, an armada of human warships prepared for the kill. The moment the Dominion fleet entered the ambush zone, Washington gave the order. Light 'em up. Hellfire erupted from the asteroid field. Railguns ignited the void with tungsten slugs, ripping through Dominion hulls like paper. Hidden missile silos, buried in the very rock itself, opened and unleashed payloads that spiraled toward the enemy formation. Admiral Zykantor, leading the Dominion fleet, barely had time to react. 1 second, his ships had been pursuing a retreating enemy. The next, half his fleet was ablaze, explosions cascading through the black like a collapsing star. The humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't engage in long, drawn-out wars of attrition. They struck fast, they struck hard, and they fought dirty. Command ship is losing shields, an Imperial officer screamed as the human fleet closed in. Zykantor's claws dug into the command console. Impossible. Their fleet was retreating. A nearby officer hesitated. Sir, we fell for it. Then, the human-AI warfare began. Corporal Benny Hacks Jones had spent years developing cyber warfare tactics to exploit the over-reliance of the Dominion on their centralized network. The moment the Dominion ships entered range, he launched a full-scale system override. Dominion warships went dark. Targeting systems malfunctioned. Communications jammed. Fighters spun out of control as human-coded viruses flooded their systems. Even the largest dreadnoughts, massive behemoths meant to break planetary sieges, began shutting down, their artificial intelligence hijacked by Earthborn algorithms. On the roar, Washington grinned as reports flooded in. They're blind. Singh gave a rare smirk. Time to finish the job. Vasquez and his troops deployed in boarding pods, slamming into the sides of crippled Dominion ships, blasting through airlocks. Close quarters combat was where humans thrived. The Dominion, used to clean, mechanized warfare, wasn't prepared for the savagery of a Terran boarding party. Grenades, knives, blunt instruments when ammo ran low. A Dominion officer barely had time to react before a human soldier tackled him into a bulkhead, slamming his helmeted head against the metal with a force that would have made any bar bouncer proud. Admiral Zykantor, his bridge under siege, roared into his communicator. All remaining ships, retreat. The order came too late. A single Terran battlecruiser, the USS Wrath, broke from formation and charged straight toward the flagship. Its captain, a wild-eyed veteran known simply as Bull Carson, grinned as his crew braced for impact. Zykantor turned, horrified, as the human ship rammed directly into the bridge, breaching the hull and sucking half his officers into the vacuum. He barely had time to scream before a Terran Marine tackled him to the floor. The Dominion fleet was no more. Washington stood on the bridge of the Roar, watching the wreckage drift through space. "How many made it out?" he asked. "Less than 20%, Singh replied. "They got slaughtered." "Good," Washington muttered. He tapped the ash from his cigar. "That was for Luna." The crew around him cheered, but Washington only stared into the void beyond. The Dominion had just suffered the most humiliating defeat in its history, and the Emperor would not take it lightly. The remnants of the Dominion fleet burned in the void, their shattered husks drifting through the cold abyss. Washington stood on the bridge of the Roar, watching as the last of the enemy vessels flickered and died. Smoke curled from his cigar, the ember burning low, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the tactical screen, where the real battle had yet to begin. Morkelthal had not responded to the slaughter of his forces at Luna. He had not sent a single transmission, not a single boastful declaration of vengeance. He was waiting, biding his time, and Washington knew exactly what that meant. "They're regrouping," Singh said beside him, arms folded tight. "This wasn't their main fleet. We just took out a forward attack force." Washington exhaled smoke through his nose. "Then where's the hammer?" The answer came seconds later. The alarms blared, red lights flashing through the bridge. A communication officer's voice cracked over the speakers, tense and urgent. "Sir, new contacts, multiple war signatures." The tactical screen flared to life, painting a picture of encroaching death. Hundreds of Dominion warships had just exited hyperspace, their colossal forms blotting out the stars. They dwarfed the first wave. The Emperor had sent everything. Admiral Singh's lips parted slightly. "Well, there's your hammer." Washington crushed the cigar between his fingers. "All ships, battle stations. We end this, here and now." The final battle for humanity's survival had begun. The Dominion fleet moved in eerie silence, its warships gliding through the void in perfect formation. This was the Empire's full might, the last and greatest armada, brought to bear against an enemy they had once thought insignificant. From the heart of the fleet, the Imperial dreadnought loomed, a vessel the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons capable of leveling entire worlds. It was the Emperor's personal warship, the throne of Morkel, and it was coming for them. On the bridge of the Roar, Washington adjusted the strap of his sidearm and turned to Singh. "If that thing makes it into firing range, we're done." "Then we don't let it," she replied, ice cold, calculating. The fleet opened fire. Railguns howled through the void, plasma cannons flared, and missiles cut through the dark like falling stars. Explosions bloomed across the Dominion formation, but the enemy ships pushed forward, their shields absorbing the first brutal wave of impact. The void became a storm of fire and shrapnel. O'Hara led the first wave of fighters, her squadron diving between the massive warships like sharks through a school of prey. Dominion interceptors swarmed, emerald laser fire tracing wild paths through the black. But the human pilots fought with reckless abandon. They weaved, dodged, mocked their pursuers over open comms, and fired with pinpoint accuracy. A Dominion captain barked orders from his bridge, his reptilian face twisted in frustration. They don't fight in formation. They move like mad creatures. His second-in-command barely had time to respond before an Earth-made torpedo smashed through the viewport, sucking them both into the void. Below, Vasquez and his Marines prepared for a direct assault on the enemy's flagship. The plan was insane. Board the throne of Morkel. Kill the Emperor. End the war. It was the kind of mission that only humans would attempt. Vasquez checked his rifle, cracked his neck, and grinned. Tell me again why we're the ones storming the biggest death ship in the fleet. Hacks, already hacking into the enemy's network, didn't look up from his console. Because we're the only ones crazy enough. Damn right. Vasquez slammed a fresh mag into his rifle. Let's do this. Washington's voice came over the comms. Vasquez, you and your team are on your own once you're inside. No reinforcements. Vasquez grunted. Wouldn't want it any other way. The boarding pods launched, streaking toward the enemy flagship like bullets. Anti-air guns filled the void with plasma, but they were too slow. The pods smashed into the dreadnought's hull, cutting through its armor like spears through flesh. Within moments, human soldiers spilled into the enemy's corridors, rifles barking death. The Dominion elite guard met them head-on, hissing, snarling, fighting with disciplined brutality. But human Marines were street fighters, bar brawlers, dirty and mean, and completely unwilling to fight fair. A Dominion warrior raised his energy blade, only to get a steel-toed boot to the gut and a shotgun blast to the face. The halls ran red with alien blood. Vasquez kicked down a door, storming into the control center. Hacks followed, already working on overriding the ship's mainframe. Give me a minute, Hacks muttered, fingers flying over the console. We don't have a minute, Vasquez shot back, firing into a cluster of Dominion soldiers. Outside, the battle raged to its breaking point. The roar shook violently as a barrage of plasma torpedoes slammed into its shields. Singh gritted her teeth, gripping the edge of the command console. We're losing ground, a lieutenant shouted. Washington ignored the chaos around him, eyes locked onto the massive dreadnought. His instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. Then he saw it. A hidden energy buildup in the dreadnought's core. A planet-killer weapon, charging directly at Earth. Washington's blood ran cold. Singh, he said, his voice deadly calm. If that thing fires, this war won't matter. She understood immediately. We have one shot. He nodded. Let's take it. The roar broke from the formation, engines burning red-hot. The ship barreled straight toward the enemy flagship, dodging fire, tearing through Dominion ranks with savage efficiency. Other Terran warships followed, a spearhead of vengeance. Inside the dreadnought, the Emperor finally spoke. Foolish creatures, Morkel Thale murmured, watching the battle unfold from his throne room. They believe this changes anything? His elite guard surrounded him, their black armor gleaming. His clawed fingers tapped the armrest of his throne as he activated the firing sequence. The weapon began to charge. And then the doors exploded. Vasquez walked through the smoke, rifle in one hand, combat knife in the other. Blood dripped from his knuckles. Behind him, his Marines stood battered but unbroken. The Emperor slowly rose to his feet. You dare? Morkel Thale hissed. Vasquez cracked his neck. Buddy, I don't dare. I just do. The elite guards charged. The final battle was on. The throne room became a bloodbath. Human Marines fought like demons, outnumbered, outgunned, but unyielding. Vasquez carved through the enemy with brutal precision, gunfire and blades clashing in a deadly rhythm. Then he faced the Emperor. Morkel Thale moved with inhuman speed, his energy blade a whirlwind of death. Vasquez barely dodged in time, rolling beneath a slash that would have taken his head clean off. You fight without honor, the Emperor sneered. Vasquez spat blood. We fight to win? He drew his knife and lunged. The emperor parried, but Vasquez didn't stop. He fought dirty, punching, kicking, headbutting, every trick in the book. The emperor staggered, unprepared for the sheer ferocity of human combat. Then Vasquez saw his opening. With a roar, he plunged the knife into Morkelthal's throat. The emperor gasped, his eyes wide in shock. He reached up, clawing at the blade, choking on his own blood. Then slowly he collapsed. The throne room fell silent. Hax exhaled. Holy shit! Vasquez wiped his blade. Yeah, that just happened. Outside, the Dominion fleet began to collapse. With their leader dead, their morale shattered. Some ships fled, others surrendered. The war was over. On the Roar, Washington watched the chaos unfold. He leaned back, lit a new cigar, and smiled for the first time in weeks. "Remember the fallen," he murmured. And then, the humans raised their flag over the Dominion's corpse.